Can I add, I want to add something else too, because there's an element that's been missing in everything we've discussed tonight. We talked about the element of mistreatment, the lack of due process. 3, the fact that these crimes probably aren't actually crimes. And 4, the fact that he's a child. There is a 5th element to this situation, which I don't think anyone's touched on, but that is, if somehow someone gets through all these procedures, through all the rules of evidence that are tilted against you, the exonerating evidence that you're not allowed to see, and so on and so forth, you make it and you get acquitted, you can get put back in Guantanamo until the end of the War on Terror, which is never. So I mean, sorry, but thinking about the book by Franz Kafka, The Trial, right? Which brought us the word Kafkaesque. In the trial, if Joseph K. had been able to get to his trial and get acquitted, he was going to get his life back. So we actually have something, the word Kafkaesque is no longer sufficient, I think, to describe what we're facing.
That's exactly the problem with conflating criminal rules and rules that should apply to civilians and rules that should apply in peacetime and rules that apply in wartime, what Darryl was talking about earlier. Under the laws of war, you can hold a combatant until the end of hostilities. And the United States has a theory that it's at war with the entire world as long as there's terror. It's at war with terror around the world as long as terrorism continues. And that's how they get to the conclusion that even if Omar Khadr was acquitted, or even if anybody else who goes through a military commission is acquitted, they can still hold them because they're a combatant in this war. And it shows exactly why it's so dangerous to apply a law of war model, which is designed to deal with a specific, a circumscribed, excuse me, a circumscribed situation in which the rules, peacetime rules don't apply, but in which there's a battlefield and there's an actual conflict going on, and applying those rules in a broader context is very, very dangerous, and you get to these absurd and extremely disturbing anomalies and real just derogations of basic fundamental human rights and freedoms.
And when one talks about anomalies and logic being thrown out the window, when we were on our way on getting ready to go to Guantanamo Bay to appear before the military commission, Mr. Bellinger, who was a spokesperson in Counsel for Condoleezza Rice, was interviewed and gave a press conference, which involved, I think, a number of press reporters here today. What he said was, essentially, even this process, this trial that we've set up, that we've rigged to work for us, and if it doesn't work, then we're still going to consider keeping Omar Khadr indefinitely.
This question is for Lieutenant William Kuebler. I'd like to know, when do you feel that the Bush administration will feel that Omar Khadr has suffered enough?
The current administration and the prosecutors who represent the Department of Defense position in this prosecution think that Omar Khadr deserves a life sentence or something very near a life sentence for the acts that he's alleged to engage in. So, which, for the reasons that we've discussed at length, is preposterous. But I think as far as Omar Khadr is concerned, the decision makers in place now believe that he's not going to have been punished enough until the day he's off the earth.
Jennifer, do you want to speak more broadly about this question of where is this policy going to go? How is it ever going to end?
I think that the winds are shifting, and there is going to be an election in the United States, and in 2008 we're going to have a new president. And I think there's a recognition that even if people aren't upset by the human rights aspect of what's happening, I think there's a recognition that these policies just don't work. They don't work. The enemy is defined too broadly. It's not targeted. It's not effective. And I think that those arguments will ultimately persuade, hopefully, the next administration to change course and to change policies. And we will see a process of closing Guantanamo and ending policies of transferring suspects to torture elsewhere. I think the winds are shifting. I think it's going to be slow. I don't think that we're going to see a radical sea change in the next year and a half. But I do think, at least within the United States, there's a growing recognition about how horrific these policies are in terms of the human impact, and also how misguided they are in terms of effectiveness in achieving even the goals that the Bush administration claims it wants to achieve.
Where are we in Canada with this issue? And I know from a comparative perspective, the detention of Australians in Guantanamo became a hot public issue much earlier on than it did in Canada. Are we seeing a change in that, and what do people see as the way forward to accelerate that?
I'm not clear of the question, but if I speak for Bill, because he's well able to speak for himself, his position is that the most practical road to success in bringing Omar Khadr home is through you people, is through the public. We have a tension about that. I don't believe that I'm a dual Scot, hard to persuade, but on a positive note. And Bill has just collapsed here, but he sees that as really the most effective way to go. And I believe he sees that because, as he's explained, the military commission process is so rigged that once Khadr is put into that process, it's a dead duck. I don't have the same confidence in the process. I believe it's one strategy. There should be amongst others. And why do I say that? Maybe it's because I'm from Alberta. I've seen the social alliance at work, and now we have Harper in power, and he seems to strike me, I don't know how he strikes you, as somewhat of an intransigent type of chap, you know? Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen in Canada recently is that Canadian public opinion is starting to turn the corner to some extent. There have been a series of polls that came out in June and July by a polling firm based in Vancouver called Angus Reid that suggests that support for Canadian president intervention on behalf of Omar has gone from an even split, 40-40 to 51-43, and then I think the most recent poll suggests that 59% of the respondents indicated that they thought it was appropriate for the Canadian government to step up. Now, I don't think that it's a particularly salient issue at this point in time or deeply felt by a widespread chunk of population, but those numbers are certainly encouraging. And then you saw last month the mainstream organization, the Canadian Bar Association, when presented with the facts about this case, came out immediately and said, this is outrageous, and wrote a letter to the Prime Minister saying that Omar needs to be returned home. Today you saw Mr. Dion, the leader of the principal opposition party in Canada, come out and publicly call for Omar's release from Guantanamo, if not repatriation. So I think we are starting to see momentum gather, and we shouldn't be surprised. It's been 5+ years now, and Canadians are, like other countries, only have so much tolerance about how they're going to see a fellow citizen treated.
It's his birthday today, and I don't think many people in the room realize that either. And I'm just stunned to know that even if he's acquitted, he will not be released unless we can, move our government to really be, and our population to really be active on his behalf. What are other in other countries? Not only did they pressure the governments, but what kind of coalitions were built between communities and groups that swayed public opinion? I'm a part of the Human Rights Watch Committee here in Toronto, and we have a certain outreach, and we have a certain number of things that we can do. But what did other people do in other countries that we can use as a model? Very simple things that we can say, okay, so they took out ads. Should we get community people to collect money and take out some ads and say, hey, this boy was 21 today, and he's been in Guantanamo for 6 years. Like, when are we going to do something about that? Is he going to celebrate 22 and 25 and 105 there without our support? I mean, like, what did people do that sort of captured attention? I realize that the Lieutenant Commander Kuebler's voice has been very important. I realize that it in fact, I think is probably to Omar's benefit, if there has been, it hasn't been a benefit really, but benefit to have two your minds working at this moment and looking at the process and how to move it forward for him. But what are the things that people have done in other places that sort of say, like, make Harper pay attention, because we're going to chain ourselves to his gates, we're going to do ads, we're going to do something provocative and engaging of the public?